Welcome. This is the Yale Global Executive Leadership Program Application FAQ webinar, just to make sure that you're in the right place. My name is Kristen Sorek-West, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Executive Education at the Yale School of Management. On the call with me today is Joanne Legler. She is Executive Education's Senior Director of Learning Partnerships, as well as Jamie Willitson, Registrar and Associate Director of Learning Operations. So just to give you a bit of an overview about our roles at Executive Education, Joanne is a wonderful advisor. She's often the first person prospective participants speak with to learn more about our programs and understand if they're a good fit. Jamie helps participants prepare to attend programs by sharing important logistical information, providing critical updates, and answering all sorts of questions about attending a program. Joanne and Jamie are intimately familiar with the YGELP application and application process and are here to share with you all of their insights and tips. So Joanne, if you could just transition to the next slide, so we can go over our wonderful agenda here. Our objective is just to give you, first off, a brief overview about the Yale Global Executive Leadership Program. Really, for a deeper dive, we're going to point you to our website. We have our brochure, as well as our earlier webinar that featured the faculty director of YGELP, as well as past participants. Those are very rich resources full of information. So if you have questions that go beyond the scope of this webinar, please check those resources out. For this webinar, we're going to go over our application, including the process, the timeline, and individual components. We'll offer some suggestions on how to best prepare, including specific next steps, and then we'll conclude by answering your questions and leaving you with some of our best advice. So just before we kick things off, a final update on just housekeeping items. So we encourage you to use both the chat and the Q&A throughout the webinar to ask your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. And so just to reinforce that this time together is a discussion. So we're going to answer your questions. Please submit them when they come up and we'll do our best. We are recording this webinar, and while we will distribute the recording afterwards to all registrants, we will not be distributing the slides. So without further ado, let's kick things off, Joanne and Jamie.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everybody. I'm Joanne Legler, Senior Director of Learning Partnerships. I'm so thrilled that you're taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend with us today to learn more about the Yale Global Executive Leadership Program. As you can tell, that's a bit of a mouthful, so we'll do our best to just say YGELP from here on out, and looking forward to hearing your questions. Don't be shy. Feel free to throw those in the chat if they make sense for the time that we're talking. We'll answer them right away, and if not, we'll save some time toward the end to answer questions, and my colleagues are here to help out to type in answers to questions as they come through as well. So as Kristen said, thank you, Kristen, for the introduction. We're going to start by talking just briefly about YGELP. Really do encourage you, as Kristen just did, to check out our other resources. We have some wonderful webinars. We've got some great community profiles of some of our past participants and alumni. So do get to know YGELP on your own. Today, we're going to be talking mostly about the application process, but to get started, always a good idea to just go over the basics. So YGELP, as you can tell by the acronym, the Yale Global Executive Leadership Program, this is absolutely our sort of big flagship leadership program. We've been running it for a number of years now. So this is absolutely for folks in the C-level suite, or on the path toward the most leadership or opportunity that your organization has. That means in general that most folks in our past programs and what we're looking for moving forward have about 20 years of experience. That seems to be on average, that seems to be on point for what we're looking for, what makes sense for our program. That doesn't mean that we won't consider folks with a little bit less work experience, or certainly, of course, a little bit more experience. If you think now is the time for you to participate in a program at this level, we certainly welcome you to apply. And I would look forward then to hearing what you have to say about why you think your level of experience makes you a great candidate for the program within your application. The G Global representation. This is a great way for us to say that we are looking for candidates to participate in the program who are both globally minded, regardless of where you might live in the world, that you've had experience doing business and leading global teams or doing business globally, or that perhaps that's going to be the next step in your leadership challenge, but that you're bringing a perspective that would allow for others to learn what you know about doing business in a global context. It also means that from a networking perspective, we are looking for participants who will bring a new perspective in. So this is absolutely open to all participants, regardless of where they may be sitting at this moment in the world or sitting when the program comes to pass. You will need to come here to SOM to experience the program in person, but we are looking for the cohort to well represent the globe and well represent what it means to be in a global business context. And then finally, the question I often get is how many people come to the YGELP program or YGELP every year? And while that does vary and has varied over the years, we think the sweet spot is just about 40 participants. That's a great size of a cohort. It allows for people not only to intimately get to know one another, but provides enough volume for there to be diverse perspectives that are coming into the classroom and to the cohort at each time. So that's about what we shoot for. We've certainly had smaller cohorts, and perhaps one day we'll have bigger cohorts. But another thing to point out is that our space, the Evans Hall at Yale School of Management, the classrooms that we use are all intentionally small. And that means that you have every opportunity to be recognized in the classroom, ask lots of questions, be able to see and view and hear one another. So 40 participants is about what we think makes sense for each cohort. Okay, the delivery of YGELP, hopefully you are here because you already know that our program is an in-person and on-campus program. And so we hope you're looking forward to coming to New Haven, Connecticut on the East Coast of the US. We're about 2 hours away from New York City by train or by car, not too far from Boston or DC. And you will come here 3 times within the course of about 8 months to take the delivery of the program in person on campus at the School of Management. So we hope you're looking forward to your travel here. In addition, so that you don't lose that connection with our faculty, with your network, with your classmates, we will also meet up monthly via Zoom virtually. We'll do our best to make sure that each time zone is represented. But that's an opportunity, like I said, to keep those connections strong, stay in touch, and then use the opportunity along with the faculty and the faculty directors to talk about what's out there, what's hot, what's on your mind, what is being talked about in business in between the modules that we offer. So speaking of that, if you haven't already, this is a great time to now pencil in the dates for the 2024 YGELP cohort. They are on the screen here. They are on our website. These are mandatory in-person on-campus dates. And so if there's a date here that doesn't match up with your own personal or work calendar, now is the time to sort that out and make sure that you can indeed not only be here for these specific dates, but then factor in the travel to and from New Haven as well. We'll talk more a little more about that in a bit. So those are our dates. The monthly meetings dates are TBD. Those are things you'll learn a little bit more about later on. You can expect those to take place in the late afternoon to evening hours East Coast time when the time comes. But these are the dates, they are fixed. And if you are here hoping to learn more about the 2025 cohort, hang in there. Hopefully we'll have those dates by the end of this calendar year, and you can start planning in advance for that. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into the YGELP curriculum so that you know what you're going to get out of the program and hopefully learn a little bit more about why this might make sense for you at this point in your career. And we think about the curriculum being built around 3 curricular pillars. They should come as no real surprise. Hopefully this is exactly what you are looking for as a potential leader, global leader or current global leader. And we start with leadership. So obviously, like I said at the beginning, this is our flagship leadership program. And this follows along with the mission of the School of Management, which is to educate leaders for business and society. So this is woven into the program. It's going to elevate your capacity to drive organizational change and success, while making sure that you are keeping in mind the stakeholder perspectives. So you'll take classes on your own personal leadership style, your motivation to be leaders, corporate finance, corporate governance, and things like sustainability concepts. Those really, like I said, tie in nicely to our mission. Secondly, I'll bring up the G again for global, and this is something that makes a lot of sense to us as an institution that's known pretty well around the world. But we also want to be able to deepen your global perspective and your understanding of the global context of business to overcome the strategic challenges of operating in this very globalized world. So you'll take classes related to things like a global economy, maybe immigration policy, things related to macroeconomic trends or opportunities in emerging markets. And then finally, we want you to leave with a solid toolkit of what it means to be at the top or at the helm of an organization as an executive. So this is where you're going to sharpen your business acumen to drive profitability and growth in your organization. You'll do that by taking on content related to things like decision-making, digital transformation, negotiations, employee engagement, motivation and hiring, and then restructuring and turnaround. Now, of course, these things may change. We want to make sure that the curriculum always stays current and relevant. And so the actual courses or classes or faculty will shift and ebb and flow as the program evolves from one year to another. So if you are admitted into the program, of course, we'll give you tons more information about the content, the courses, and the faculty as we get closer to the start date. All right, so if all of this sounds good, and I hope that it does, you may be thinking, great, what next? How do I apply for the program? So let's talk a little bit about our application. Our application is open, which we are thrilled about, and you are welcome to apply starting now, anytime through about the middle of February of 2024 for our program that will begin in April. Our application form is a bit of a two-parter. So if you are interested, I would absolutely encourage you to go ahead and fill out the application form. The first part of that will be an opportunity for you to just verify your email address. You've seen this happen in other application type situations before. It helps us know that you're a real person, that your email works, and that we can continue to communicate successfully with you. So go ahead and fill out our very first form, then go ahead and click on the link, make sure that your email is verified, and then you'll find yourself face-to-face with our actual application. Of course, like with any application, you'll note that you've got to fill in the basics of your name, your citizenship, your phone number, your email address, and then we'll be seeking information about your professional experience, your title, more information about your company, industry, what your areas of expertise might be. This shouldn't take a terribly long time, but certainly we want to encourage you to take the time that it does take to fill it in carefully and thoughtfully. We'll want you to go ahead and upload the most recent copy of your resume. If the most recent copy of your resume is a bit dated, if it's been a minute since you've had to polish up a resume for a job interview or something else, now is the time to go ahead and dig it out, dust it off, maybe get some feedback or some coaching on it, and put it together in a way that makes sense for somebody who might not know your industry very well, so that we can read it and thoroughly appreciate all the elements of what you've done and are doing currently. There's no need necessarily to get it down to 1 page or 2 pages. Your resume is a perfect, hopefully, representation of who you are and what you've done. But do keep in mind that you're sending it off to an admissions committee who's reading a lot of applications and a lot of resumes. So polish, professionalism, bullet points, any opportunity you can take to explain something that might be a little bit outside the norm for what we might see on a daily basis. Acronyms, don't be afraid to make it robust without going overboard and making it so long that it takes us a long time to get through. A resume can be uploaded right into the application form. If you have any questions about that, let us know. PDF is best. Our application does include 3 short essays. Of course, we're looking to learn more about your interest in the program, your goals and your motivation for applying, and then eventually, hopefully, successfully completing the program. We're curious about why this program makes sense for you. We're curious about what you hope to be able to contribute, what's your unique value and contribution to the larger network and the cohort that you'll be joining. These aren't long essays. Again, shouldn't take too long. I wouldn't say to do them at first blush. Go ahead, either print it out or, set it aside and then really spend some time on it. It should be thoughtful. It should be holistic. Your application should tell a story from one essay to the other so that by the time we're done reading, we've got a really strong sense of who you are, what your goals and motivation are, and what you might contribute to the cohort. It shouldn't take too much time. And our application essays are, I think, about 250 words a piece. We offer the opportunity for an optional essay. This is truly optional. If you feel like you've got something that didn't quite come through as clearly as you hoped within your application, if there's something that's a bit of an anomaly that you'd like to take time to explain, please feel free to use the optional essay. If nothing comes to mind immediately, you probably don't need to use the optional essay. But if there's something you feel like it would be important for the committee to know, have at it. Do be careful. Don't use it to write another essay. Don't use it to tell us something that you think we should know, but we haven't asked. You have to trust a bit in the committee to know that we're asking only the information we feel like we need at this time to review your application. We'd also love some information from somebody else. And so at this time, it would be thoughtful for you to consider who that person might be. It might be your supervisor. If you are already at the C level, it might be a board member, a mentor. The choice is truly yours. You'll certainly want to choose someone who likes you, who has the time to write a positive letter of reference for you. And you can do it in the time frame that's required by the application deadlines. So getting an early start on this is a great idea. I always suggest for folks to get in touch with the person well ahead of time and then sit them down, maybe either over Zoom or for coffee, explain your motivation, your interest in the program, what your goals are, a little bit about the program, perhaps send them a copy of our brochure or our website, but spend some time with them and ask them to spend some time writing a solid letter of reference for you. Again, this doesn't take long. Once you name this person, we'll go ahead and take it from there to send them the information that they need, but do make sure that they have the time to do it and that it's within the deadline. And then finally, once we read our applications here, we will offer up an opportunity to interview to select candidates. Interviews are by invitation only. They will be done with the admissions committee via Zoom. So we'll look forward to getting to know you a little bit beyond your application if you're offered the opportunity to interview with the admissions team. Timeline, definitely now is a great time to start. Like I said, our application is open. So even if you're not sure if you're going to eventually submit an application, I would absolutely encourage you to just go ahead and open one up. Get familiar with what we're asking for. See if you've got the time to devote to the process itself, and then take it from there. You still have plenty of time to decide whether or not you actually want to hit submit. So on that note, what does our process look like? We try to be pretty transparent here. There's not a whole lot of mystery to the process. You will submit your application. We will invite, like I said, a select group to interview with the admissions team. We will then continue to meet as a committee to determine who we think we might like to offer the opportunity to join YGELP. This is a committee decision, myself, Jamie, others on our team, and then we'll go ahead and let you know what we think. And if it's a yes, you'll be notified according to the timeline below. Your job then is to decide whether or not you like us back. And if so, we'll expect an enrollment form that says, yes, I'm thrilled to join the YGELP cohort for 2024. And here's my deposit. The deposit required to hold your spot in the class is $10,000. Our program is a $60,000 one in total. So that $10,000 will hold your spot in the class. It is non-refundable. The priority deadline for applying to the program is just around the corner, September 29th. If you do meet the priority deadline, then our promise back to you is to be able to notify you of our final admissions decision by mid-December. Good news about that is it's a great thing to have under your belt and know about prior to the busy holiday season. Oftentimes people are taking time off toward the end of the year for the various holidays, and it's great to go into that season knowing exactly what the next year of your life is about to look like, and also gives you additional time to let folks know, both in your family who you may be spending time with over that time period, and your supervisor, your supervisees, others in your professional life, so that they know, okay, this person's going to be out of the office for a bit here and there in 2024. The more time you can spend getting ready in that way, the better off everybody will be. Our final deadline for the cohort that begins in April 2024 is mid-February. That gives us just enough time to review your application, potentially offer you an interview, and then make our final admissions decision by committee. After the September 29th deadline, it will be on a space available basis. So in the unlikely event we fill the entire cohort with those who apply in September, great, the class is full and off we go, and perhaps we close the application. That is not likely to happen. So I do encourage you to take your time with the application, but do know that it is admission is available then on a space available basis. So definitely encourage you to get your application in early if you can. If you're just finding this webinar 6 months from now and you're at the tail end of our process, that's okay too. Call us, email us, we'll talk you through it. So what are some things you can do to prepare, both for the application and for the program itself? Well, You must have a goal. What is it? Tell us more about it. Think it through, write it down, talk to others about it. What are your goals? What are your goals for your career, for your team, for your organization, for yourself? Think about and prepare for that time away from work. I just mentioned that, but I do want to belabor it just a little bit because this can often be a deal breaker for some folks. It can also come as a bit of a surprise. You really want to sit down and calendar this out, as I mentioned, including the travel time that it takes to get from and to New Haven. For some people, that's not a very big consideration. And for others, you may be flying across several time zones. So do consider what it means for you to be away from both home and work. Travel considerations, as I said, people are coming from all over the place. Do you live or have access to an airport that's going to be able to get you to the East Coast of the US pretty quickly and easily? Are there financial considerations when you're thinking about travel? Are you going to be on several planes with lots of layovers? Do you have to build in extra travel time in order to not only get here, but then get over your jet lag as well? So those are some things you'll want to think about. And then as far as financing goes, we just talked a little bit about that, but sometimes folks sort of forget that the program sadly doesn't come for free. I really encourage you to think about what the financing for the program will look like, knowing that the full payment for the program will be due just about 2 months before the program actually begins. And so you'll pay for it well ahead of time before you come and actually join the program in person. Perhaps you're lucky enough to know that this is already going to be covered by your workplace. That's great. If you're lucky enough to be in that situation, you probably don't have too much to worry about. If you're going to be self-financing, okay, do you have that money available to you when the time comes, both for the initial deposit and for the remaining fee? Are you in or a veteran of the military? Are there special opportunities you may have there? Definitely worth looking into now, particularly if you have to figure out what your eligibility is if you are a U.S. military veteran. So all of these things take a little more time than we hope that they will. So again, prepping well ahead of time will certainly make this a much less stressful process later on. Okay, that's pretty much our overview of the program. I do have some next steps for you to consider. Number one, if this is your first touch point for YGELP, if you don't even know what YGELP is, if this is just a curiosity for you and you've not quite done a ton of homework yet, no problem. Definitely hop on our website, download the YGELP brochure, make sure that you have a record in our system by doing so. This allows us to stay in touch with you and make sure that you are aware of opportunities for additional webinars. When we have great content on our website or on our LinkedIn profile or social media, you'll be notified about upcoming deadlines for the application. So that's your first step if you haven't taken that step already. As I encouraged earlier, absolutely go in and open an application. This costs you nothing anyway, but it costs you a little bit of time, and that's about it. Open it up, find out what we're looking for, start letting that be the inspiration for how you start to frame and think about the answers to the essay questions, how you're going to convince your boss or others that you're responsible to, how you're going to make the best use of this time. I said it before, I'll say it again, save those dates. You just never know. I would definitely also take this home to if you are fortunate enough to have a wonderful partner in your life, children, others that you are responsible for at home, and make sure that there's not a wedding, a graduation, something that you completely forgot about in your excitement for the YGELP application, and make sure that the days don't conflict. Again, set up time to speak with your recommender. A coffee is not bribery. It's just an opportunity to sit down with someone, explain to them about your interests, your goals, your excitement for the program, give them something to work with as they're preparing a wonderful, robust letter of reference for you. As Kristen mentioned, we have a wonderful open house webinar featuring our faculty director and 3 past participants of YGELP. I got so much out of watching that webinar, and I hope you will too. So if you have a few minutes, definitely encourage you to hop on our YouTube channel or our main website and find the link to that wonderful webinar. Learn more about the program and learn more about the experience straight from the participants. I did mention our YGELP website. We have a terrific main website about the program and then a sister website that talks more about the application process. We've got some great FAQs, probably end up answering some of them here in this webinar, but hop on our website, read the FAQs, just learn more about the program. And lastly, be aware of those upcoming deadlines. I just mentioned the September 29th deadline. You might want to circle that in red on your calendar now, and if not, maybe in double red, circle the 16th of February to make sure that you don't miss the deadline for application to the 2024 cohort. Definitely feel free to contact us. We can put this email address, somexeced.info@yale.edu, right in the chat somewhere. Don't be afraid. We are really nice people. We're really excited to answer your questions. And there is no question that's too small if it helps you better understand the process or the program. So feel free to contact us and let us know what's on your mind. Kristen, Jamie, I hope I didn't forget anything. I can see some Q&As or Qs, I should say, in the chat, but I haven't had a chance to read them yet. Is there anything you'd like me to tackle first? So if you haven't, by the way, put your question in the chat or the Q&A yet, feel free to do that now. We'll do our best to get through everything in the next 15 or 20 minutes, and then give you some parting advice as we close out the webinar. So what do you guys think? Anything that I can tackle right away?
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, there's a great question that came up about recommenders. So a
Yeah,
question
great.
in the chat about what if I don't have any recommenders?
Great question. You need to find one, and you will. You just may have to think creatively. So our expectations for recommendations are, I'd say, rather low, and I mean that in a good way. It's really up to you to determine who the best person is in your life to recommend you for a program such as this. If you are somebody who reports to somebody else, that's probably your best bet. If you used to report to somebody else, that may be a really good second choice, a former supervisor. I think the only things I would really suggest staying away from is somebody who works for you. There's, sort of a potential discomfort or a conflict of interest for somebody who, you pay to be there all the time, to then write you a letter of recommendation for a competitive program. So that's probably one I'd avoid. I also tend to let folks know that I don't think a spouse, a brother, a parent is the best choice. They love you, and it's so nice that they would even offer to spend the time to tell others how much they love you and how great you are. It really, to be frank, shows a bit of a lack of judgment. So unless your family member is also your business partner, that's probably one to avoid. And even in that case, you might want to find somebody else. So again, suggestions are a supervisor, a former supervisor, a mentor, somebody who oversees charity work that you do. You can get creative. Again, our expectations are sort of low to make sure that there's room and creativity for who you choose, but everybody has someone. You just may have to think outside the box a bit.
Thank you, Joanne. We have a lot of great questions coming in,
Great.
and this is wonderful because we have time budgeted until 4. So let's run through them. A great question came in about program fee assistance. So the question was specifically, do you offer tuition assistance for folks from historically marginalized communities? More broadly, do we offer program fee assistance for YGELP?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish I had a better answer, but we don't. YGELP is one of those programs that's very high level, the quality of faculty, of materials, of content, hotels, food. It's just not possible for us at this time to offer discounted tuition for anybody. So unfortunately, this is, I think, the only program in our wide portfolio of programs that does not offer a discount tuition assistance. The only exception to that is for military candidates. So again, if that's a bucket that you fall into, do let us know individually so that we can point you in the right direction for next steps. But at this time, no, we don't offer any tuition assistance, scholarships, or discounts on tuition for YGELP.
Joanne, going back to the recommenders really quickly, can someone ask their client to recommend them?
Yeah. Yes, I've definitely done a lot of admissions work in my life, and sometimes a client sort of is who you're responsible to, right? If you are a business owner and you are responsible to your clients, they're kind of your supervisor in a way. So yeah, I would absolutely welcome a client recommendation for the YGELP application. Jamie, I assume you would agree with me, but I don't want to make any assumptions. If you nod your head, I'll assume you feel the same way about that. Yeah, Jamie's nodding her head. So I would say yes to that.
Great. Does the cohort accept people who work at nonprofits or just the equivalent of a Fortune 500? This is a great question.
Such a great question, Kristen, right? As I said in the beginning of our webinar, our goal always is to make our cohort as diverse and as interesting as possible. And that diversity would include sector, it would include industry. I don't think anyone would learn from cohort full of people who sort of think or look or sound just like them, right? And so what we want to do is create a cohort that's as interesting and diverse as possible so you can learn from as many different perspectives as possible. Obviously, from what you can probably tell, between the price for the program and the executive piece, there's maybe an assumption that this is for, corporate executives only or people who are in certain industries. And we'd love to see more folks from the nonprofit industry, from government, from more traditionally underrepresented industries and functional areas when we talk about programs like these. So while I know that can be difficult, our nonprofit folks don't find themselves with salaries quite as lucrative, perhaps, as others. If you can make it happen, your perspective would be very welcome in the class.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm reading a few more that are coming in.
Yeah, let's shoot them toward me.
Yeah, so here's a great one. Are there any network opportunities with industry leaders as a part of the program?
Yeah, that's a good question. Networking, I'm going to say a soft yes to that. I think what our faculty, and this is actually a really great reason to watch the webinar that we did with our faculty director, and that's Professor Jeff Sonnenfeld. If you don't know Professor Sonnenfeld's name, number one, I'd be surprised, but number two, go and find out about him. He's quite prolific in his writing. He's on CNBC or CNN about every other day. He's an absolute expert in the space of leadership. And so what's wonderful about that is Professor Sonnenfeld knows just about everybody. In fact, I was just in another session with him where he had an opportunity to speak to a number of chief executives, to a large group of folks who were here for one of our programs. So Jeff's got some great contacts, and he will absolutely make the best of those relationships to bring practitioners in to speak with the participants in each of our programs. So that's, sort of 1 on 40. So the networking opportunity, I'd say, sure, in the event that you are able to either follow up or exchange business cards or ask a question in class. But in fact, they're really there to come and tell you what they know, give you some great advice, share leadership stories. Networking, frankly, will happen with your cohort. This is an executive leadership program. And, as we know, it can be a tough place to be, and it may feel like you don't have a network around you. So networking with other people who are in your position, who are sharing the same struggles and opportunities that you are, frankly, that's almost going to be more valuable, if not just as valuable. These other 39 people are your network now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a great question come in about titles, really. So the question was, are you still eligible to attend, or are you still a good participant for YGELP if you are, in fact, the CEO or the owner of a company? This is, I think, a great opportunity for us to just touch on how, the diversity of titles that come into this program, because there are some pretty significant variations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And Jamie's been here way longer than I have, and she's been so intimately involved with YGELP. But in my opinion, absolutely. I think what's cool about this is especially the last couple of years, we've seen C-level titles be very creative. In the past, there wasn't such thing as a CTO or a chief learning officer or a human resources manager. And so it's really been exciting to see that C-level has expanded to include not just the CEO, but others at that C-level. So worry less about your title and worry more about how you're going to interpret your work experience in the application to allow us to understand what you're responsible for. So if the question is, does it have to be C-level? No. Should you kind of be on your way there or some equivalent to it? Probably. And that's more to make sure you get as much out of the program and your cohort mates get just as much out of you as possible. So this isn't a great program for somebody who just simply hasn't had that experience yet. And that's okay. They're not going to let you run the place with very little work experience. That said, there are lots of entrepreneurs out there who, sort of naturally ascend to the C-level just by virtue of being the founder of a company. We welcome those opportunities as well. So yeah, lots of room to think about titles, think about how we might think about your titles, but go for it. Let us think through whether or not we think that profile fits for this particular cohort. If you think you have an argument to make for your own participation, you don't have a whole lot to lose here. And we'd be happy to talk to you more about that.
Thank you. Another one. aside from your open house webinar, is it possible to contact you to be connected to an alumnus to find out more about their experience?
Yeah, sure. You know what I've found in working with the alums that I've had a chance to connect with is how eager they are to let other people know how their experience was. Usually what I think is best is to find someone who, has sort of the experience, the time, and in some way matches up with what you're looking to learn a little bit more about. So perhaps there's somebody who's coming from quite a distance and your main concern is how am I going to get there? Okay, well, let's then hook you up with somebody who can speak to that. If you're more interested in the content or the time spent or the networking opportunity, that's a little bit more broad. So best thing to do in that case is honestly, very much, first of all, watch the webinar. Those 3 participants had such a range of experiences that they might work for everybody collectively. And if not, then absolutely let me know through our website and we'll do our best to find somebody to connect you with.
Thank you, Joanne. We have we have a question that came in through the chat. Will Zoe Chance be one of the speakers at the course?
Well, I'm guessing you're asking because you'd be pretty excited if the answer was yes. Everyone loves Zoe Chance. If you don't know who she is, please go hop on her website. She just wrote a great article about her time at Mattel, and I think she was the head of the Barbie line at the time. Obviously, we did an interview with her in our Insights magazine, and she's just a heck of a nice person. So if you're asking because you already know these things about Zoe, all I can say is I hope so. One of the things that's funny about YGELP is we put together the program at the same time we're putting together the cohort. And so the nuances of who will teach and when, are frankly up in the air until probably a few months from now. So cross your fingers. If not, you can watch this wonderful webinar that Kristen did with Zoe. Do you want to talk about that for a quick sec, Kristen? Because that was in service of YGELP, right?
It was indeed. So we hosted a webinar with Zoe back in March, I believe, or April, and her focus was on vulnerability in the workspace and addressing tough questions. And so it was a wonderfully interactive webinar. We had a lot of people on the call participating. In the webinar, we did break out into smaller groups. So there was a lot of, there were private conversations being held and material to work through. So I presented some of her material. So if we do something like that again, I'll be sure to let everyone on this call know, because we do love working with Zoe and she delivers a fantastic webinar.
Agreed. Yeah. And she's just such a great person to talk to, and her energy is infectious. If you haven't read her book, I'll put a plug in for her book on, oh my gosh, superpower book. That's influence. Right. I was going to say vulnerability. I lost my word for a second there. Influence is your superpower. It's a really fun read.
Mm-hmm. We did get a few questions in about selection criteria, like do you prefer having a certain degree, like an MBA, or do you have, or a similar question was asked of like, what are specific examples of the kinds of questions being asked at the interview stage? I do know that we do have a section on the website that outlines some criteria, like who should attend. I believe the header is who should attend. So that is a place to look for more information. But I wanted to ask Joanne if you had any follow-up to that.
Yeah, so what I heard you say, and correct me if I got it wrong, was like, what are we looking for? What's the selection? I see a question in the Q&A about what's the selection criteria for applicants, and then maybe, going into how we think about the interview as a complement. Selection criteria is always a tricky thing to talk about. Admissions is always more art than it is science, but the, basic criteria is we'd love for folks to be at a level for which an executive leadership program makes the most sense at this point in their career. Beyond that, does get a little bit fuzzy, right? We've mentioned 20 years of work experience. That's our best estimation for who would be able to have enough to contribute and have had the experience at that point in their career where they would, again, not only contribute, but be in a group of peers from whom they can learn just as much as they can offer up. So selection criteria is probably in this case, very different from, I think, degree programs, much more about content than it is about something like a test score, which we don't have any admissions tests for this program, or degree. We don't have any expectation for a specific level of degree either. So we've always, of course, had folks in the program who are at the very terminal degree level, JDs or MBAs or MDs, and then others who have perhaps finished a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree. So our expectation for education is bring what you have. Again, there's no test score, so the selection criteria is going to be very much based on not only your experience and what you bring to the table, but a clear representation of what you intend to do with the program, what you intend to get out of it, what you think are your weak points that you want to shore up, what you don't know, what you want to learn, how you want to network with people, how you see your goals moving forward. So the content of the application, as you'll come to find out, I think there's an emphasis there on trying to get to know you as a professional in your space and less on what you've done in the past in terms of, something like a degree. So that's what I'd encourage you to focus on. When we get to the interview stage, you may find yourself thinking, why are they asking me questions that are on my resume or in my essays? And that's very intentional on our part. We want to make sure, what you've said in your application sort of matches up with what you would say to somebody in person if you were meeting them for the first time or explaining to them what you do or what your role is, a reconfirmation that your goals remain the same, that you have the time to devote to the program. And so it's really about getting to that first level, making sure there's a good match for eligibility and expectations, and using the interview to dive a little bit deeper, to get to know you a little bit more personally, a little bit of a deeper dive more professionally, and then making sure that there's a match between what you said you wanted to get out of the program and how you talk about it with us, to make sure that there's a consistency of your story from the very beginning of the application all the way through an interview. Anything else we can blast through here? I know Jamie's typing furiously in the chat, so I appreciate your help there, Jamie, in the Q&A in the chat. But I'd love to answer any more questions if we have them.
There was one unanswered question. Approximately how many of your past participants are entrepreneurs? I will say, having looked at past cohorts, there is a presence of them. Off the top of my head, I don't know the approximate volume or quantity of entrepreneurs. I'm happy to follow up with you on that. But I do know I feel like we get some every year, but I can't be precise.
You're right, Kristen. I think, there's always somebody in there who's an entrepreneur is a funny thing to define in the moment, right? So past entrepreneur, future entrepreneur, sometimes we'll follow up with alumni of the program who even got inspired or partnered with somebody that they met through the program in one way or another. So entrepreneur at the time of the program, yeah, I think some, sure. More open to it, I guess maybe is also the answer to that question is, is this only for people who have a defined role as CEO of this established company with this many employees? And the answer there is no. If you are an entrepreneur of a small business, small organization, we're interested in your profile too. Have we gotten through everything?
Remarkably, yes. There were so many questions. If anybody has
a great job feeding them along, and I can see Jamie was typing furiously to make sure all the questions in the Q&A were answered as well. So, well, in that case, we're at the 45-minute mark. Should we consider wrapping up here?
Yeah, let's share out our final advice, and if any more questions come in, try to address them before we run out of time.
That sounds good. So, who wants to go first? I'm happy to kick off at that.
Go for it,
guys. All right, great. Well, I think I was just looking at my notes here and I may have already given away my final advice, but it is about the recommendation and the reference. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's going to be harder than it is. I actually don't think that that's the case. But I do think that people tend to underestimate having to rely on someone else to get them something that they want in a time frame that, is required by the program that's asking for it. So once again, I'll just say, don't sleep on this part of the application. I don't think you have to do it right away. There's no extra points for getting it done, within a 24-hour period. And certainly we want your recommender to spend time on their reference, to be thoughtful about it. But that said, you will want to carve out some time with them if you haven't already to explain, again, especially if this is somebody you're reporting up to, the time commitment, your goals for the program, what you hope to get out of it. What we're going to ask them is to explain the relationship between the two of you, why they think you would be a great candidate for the program. And that includes addressing some of the areas that may still be areas of development for you. So sitting down and being really honest about that, I think will only give them more information to provide to us when the time comes so that they can write you that really great and robust letter of recommendation. Don't forget to tell them how great you are, all the highlights from what you've done over the past maybe several months. It's really hard as a manager to remember everything that everybody does who works with or for you. So don't be shy. This is not a great time to be humble. Remind them of some of the highlights of your work. If this conversation also includes an ask about financing, this is a great time to bring this up. For two reasons. Number one, this person might be able to actually do something for you. And number two, it's a really crummy thing to get super excited about a program, maybe even perhaps be admitted and think about enrolling, only to find out that the financing you either thought you might get or planned to rely on is either not available the way you thought it might be, or is no longer available. So again, as you can tell, we're really trying to push the idea that preparation and thinking about these things well in advance is the key here. It's not going to do you or anybody any favors to wait till the last minute on any of these items. So very, very long answer, and the takeaway is the sooner the better. Jamie, do you want to chime in with your piece of advice for the team?
Sure. Before I do that, I'm just going to answer this question that just came in.
Yes, do it.
The total cost of the program is $60,000. $10,000 of that will be due as a seat deposit to hold your spot in the program. So
Awesome.
hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, great.
So I would say operationally, we're here to help. So while we're pretty confident that we built a really smooth and insightful application, questions do come up. You'll see our email address on every email that comes your way. So once you start the application process, you will have our application email. You'll be able to reach out to us with questions. If you have a question about your particular candidacy, please reach out, especially as it relates to the timeline. So as the deadlines get closer, we'll be busy, you'll be busy, and we know that panic can sometimes set in. So as Joanne had mentioned, please try to be prepared. Make sure you know what your timelines are, you're following those so that you're aware of when deadlines will be reaching sooner than later. And any questions you have along the way, please reach out. We're here to help you. We want to make this easy and a smooth process for everyone.
Yeah, that's great, Jamie. And somebody just popped in the chat and thanked us for all this great information. So you're welcome. Thank you for thanking us, John. We're really glad that you could be here today. But I hope what you're getting out of this is that you can see we're really eager to help out here. YGELP is a very important program. We're really proud of it. And it's only as good as the people who are in it. And you'll produce a better application. You'll have a better experience if you're open and transparent. So let us know how we can be helpful. I don't think there's any last questions. I'm seeing a lot of thank you notes in the chat, which is really wonderful. So thank you so much for that. I know that Kristen would probably love to tell you a little bit more about our alumni. We have some great community profiles on our website, on our social channels. So, and Kristen and the marketing team are responsible for those. So don't be shy about popping in there, checking out some of our community profiles, and keep an eye on our website, keep an eye on our LinkedIn profile, keep an eye on your email. You'll be hearing quite a bit from us in the next couple of months. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and close out. It's been a pleasure, Jamie. Thank you so much for being part of the panel with me. And thank you to Kristen. I think she's probably popped out or having some technical difficulties, but Kristen, wherever you are, thank you so much for being part of our wonderful webinar today. We look forward to hearing from you. We certainly look forward to seeing your applications in the near future. Thanks so much to everybody for being here today. Have a great rest of the day.